Yeah, so this is, we're kind of dogfooding the process of the endgame plan, which is, I don't know how many people are familiar with this. This is, Rune is overhauling the governance structure of Maker, locking down the core protocol to just very basic things, and then moving all the innovation out into what are called sub-DAOs. So these are DAOs that kind of are like a subsidiary of MakerDAO. You can kind of think of it like that. They will have their own tokens. The launch date for these tokens is summer of next year. So when these launch, it's a fairly novel way of doing this. There is no pre-allocations. These things just go directly into farms, and then the DAO kind of emerges from that and starts making decisions on what products to build. And so there'll be multiple sub-DAOs, and they all compete.
The next big boss for us is the node infrastructure. Once we're working to decentralize that with Coinbase Cloud and the former lead developer at Thorchain, Chad, building a new L1 called Archeo. We won't get too deep into that, but once that's done and launch is estimated for Q2 of 2023, the foundation will stop running the node infrastructure that we run, and we will just be one of a network of validators running this blockchain infrastructure. That will make ShapeShift's app fully decentralized, unstoppable, uncensorable, and any other interface that wants to not run their own nodes or rely on a centralized provider like Infura will also be able to plug into Archeo. So yeah, those are some big milestones.
There's a couple of things that we can do there's an opportunity here to help ourselves. And I'm going to loosely use the term self-regulate, and it doesn't mean what it sounds like. It just means that we have to come to an agreement together about what certain words mean, and because in the end what's going to happen is the whole world's not going to end. We're going to have to exist in parallel to the existing world, and we want to live in harmony, and we want to win step by step by step. A deliberate, measured process. And to do that, we have to avoid being low-hanging fruit and getting picked off for doing something that otherwise is not wrong. And the most vulnerable surface we have in all of DeFi is the things we say, ironically. It's not the things the code does, but it's the things that we say. So if you have a token or an asset that has no underlying asset to it, do not call it a derivative, right? This is where I'm going at. And so where we need some harmonization amongst ourselves, and we have to be willing to say, well, I just called that thing a derivative token for the last 2 years. Who are you coming in here telling me to call it a token? But these are the things that will allow us to continue to flourish. If you look at, there's always almost always real world examples that have existed, like we've been around for like 5,000 years. And if you always look, every time something comes up, I just say, just look back 100 years, look back another 100 years. If you look at stuff like the insurance industry or the reinsurance industry, it all works by a treaty. Does anybody know that? Right? So if you have reinsurance Zurich and reinsurance, there's no law that enforces across the ocean. It's an agreement. It's a treaty, right? It works. It's been working like that since the beginning of time. It continues to work that way. If you look at something like arbitration, how was that invented? It was invented because two merchants halfway around the world, it took 6 weeks for the boat to get there. What if the merchants got in dispute? Travel wasn't easy. Communication wasn't easy. So instead of going to that country to go to court, they invented the arbitration system, right? And so there's all these workarounds that exist before a lot of statutes get, right? Until we start having like a new law made every week. Closing off. But if you look behind, you can often find a little bit of a blueprint or a map to map out some of the behaviors that we're trying to do, and it can be kind of an informative source.
That's music to my ears. I'm a historian, right?
I did not know that.
Oh, well, I'm a financial historian by training. I dropped out of a PhD program to do this. But yeah, so what you're saying is definitely music to my ears, right? You can look to the past to build out the future. And that's exactly, I think, right. I was going to say that the maker dilemma that you face is one that I think traditional banks used to face, right? I think in market downturns, there was a flight to cash, but the value of all the assets that would allow banks to issue notes was in fact declining. So the amount of notes in circulation would also decline. So it's, Minsky wrote about this quite a bit, but I think it's a problem that exists, I think, across all these things. So my point was, I'm actually really happy to hear that your projects are in fact looking at different jurisdictions and shopping around. And the competition is really important. I mean, I think the moment that we're in now, right, there's a lot of there's a risk of regulator overreach, I think, after the FTX blow up. In a way, there's political pressure for people to just say, frankly, dumb things, I think. It reminds me of, the fallout of the Mississippi and South Sea bubbles, right, in the early 1700s, where, both France and England had these, the invention of equity, right, almost like the invention of tokens, led to these massive bubbles. Isaac Newton lost a third of his money there. And, France banned basically most financial instruments in the aftermath of that, right? The English banned it, but then repealed the ban slowly. And so my fear is that we'll end up like the French in the 1700s, not the French today, who seem to be more like the English back then. So maybe they learned their lesson. So in the UK, banks are now preemptively limiting the amounts that people can on-ramp on-chain. I would like to also say that, the Biden administration is currently doing kind of the equivalent. Here, you get, regulators send letters to banks who then just limit access to crypto clients, even though there's no law passed on it. So what are your guys' thoughts on it? You can probably guess what mine are.
I'll be quick. Yeah, fuck the banks. Fuck the banks. If that's what they want to do, cool. It's just going to expedite their demise, and they can either embrace DeFi or get run over for it, because if they don't, there's no way that they can compete. The legacy stuff is just too inefficient. It's too centralized. It relies on too much trust. DeFi is better in every shape and form. We just need more liquidity. We need more time. All these builders here are building the tools that we need. So it's just a matter of time.
So I know a little bit about the UK because I sit as an advisor to the UK Law Reform Commission on decentralized finance. And I know that the Chancellor of the Exchequer has said that he wants the UK to lead the world. And they've commissioned all this great work. There's a disconnect between the banking sector and what the laws are that they're going to bring in. So this is I'll just say that, anybody ever work for a bank? I did. I was general counsel office at a World Bank. Yeah, a bank is theft, right? And so it's just a bunch of criminals. Bank is theft. Peter Kropotkin, I think, said that. And they're going to continue to behave as, I'll loosely say criminals do, until they can't anymore. And you're finding that in some places there is an actual will, a political will, to sort of advance thoughtful. Some places just came in early, with VASP laws or crypto regimes, whether it's Switzerland or Cayman Island. Then now you're seeing places that are coming in with thoughtful, they're bringing in panelists from around the world who work in the space and asking them, how can we change our law to make this work here, right? Because they can see the future. So I would just say that that's going to be short-lived.